You ever look around a workplace and just wonder why some bad behavior like bullying seems to persist? It can feel like a total mystery. Well, today, we're going to try to unlock that mystery. And believe it or not, we're going to do it by looking at a classic psychology experiment from the 1960s that involves an inflatable doll. It's going to tell us a whole lot about the modern office. All right, let's dive right in. So first, let's just get a handle on how big this problem really is. A study that looked at higher education found that almost two-thirds of all employees said they've been affected by workplace bullying. Two-thirds. It's a huge number. It tells you right away this isn't just about a few bad apples. And that really brings us to the core question for today. If so many people are affected, and we all know how negative the consequences are, why on earth does this behavior just keep going year after year in so many organizations? Well, the impact of this is what Dr. Leah Hollis in her 2019 paper calls an unspoken epidemic. And it's not just about hurt feelings, not at all. We're talking about serious health problems, major stress, people not showing up for work, and huge costs from employees just completely checking out. It's like this quiet crisis that's just draining our organizations from the inside. And this is where our source material for this explainer comes in. Dr. Hollis's work gives us this really powerful way to understand the problem. She basically argues that the answer to our big question, it lies in the findings of a famous experiment that has absolutely nothing to do with offices, but everything to do with how we learn to behave. So let's jump in a time machine. The key clue we're looking for comes from a 1961 experiment by a psychologist named Albert Bandura. And at the very center of this whole thing was a simple inflatable toy, a Bobo doll. What happened to this doll would end up revealing a really fundamental truth about human aggression. Bandura's setup was actually pretty simple, but brilliant. He split a bunch of kids into three groups. The first group, they watched an adult just go to town on this Bobo doll, punching it, kicking it, yelling at it, and then the adult just left. No consequences. The second group saw an adult who just played quietly and ignored the doll. But it's this third group that's the most important. They saw an adult attack the doll, but then a second adult came in and corrected them, told them off for it. So what happened next is the whole point. When the kids were left alone in the room, the ones from that first group, the ones who saw the aggression with zero consequences, they copied it, almost exactly. But the kids from the third group, the ones who saw the aggression and the intervention, they didn't repeat the bad behavior. The correction, that was the key. Okay, so now let's bring this whole idea back to the workplace. Because this isn't just a cute story about kids and toys. This experiment gives us a direct and really powerful analogy for what's happening in our offices every single day. See, in the world of work, the leader, the manager, the supervisor, the boss, they are the adult in the room. They're the ones who have the power to either look the other way when there's aggressive behavior or to step in and correct it, just like that second adult in Bandura's experiment. Dr. Hollis actually has a name for this kind of an action. She calls it deliberate indifference. And it's not just about being negligent or, being too busy. It's the conscious choice to stay passive, to do absolutely nothing, even when you know for a fact that people are getting hurt. And the effect of that in the real world is, well, it's chilling. This quote from one of the study respondents says it all. This is the voice of someone who has learned from experience that the adult in the room isn't going to do anything. It teaches people that speaking up isn't just pointless, it's actually dangerous. So what's the actual measurable cost of all this deliberate indifference? The research gives us some pretty hard, sobering data on what really happens when leaders decide to do nothing. And the data, it just paints this incredibly stark picture. When people were asked how their organization handled a bully, an overwhelming 79% said the organization did nothing. Let that sink in. Not coached, not transferred, not fired. Nothing. And right there, that's the modern-day Bobo doll experiment playing out in front of us. By doing nothing, leaders aren't being neutral. They're actively teaching the entire organization, the person being bullied, the bully themselves, and everyone watching from the sidelines, that this kind of aggressive behavior is okay. It's a powerful lesson in what the culture will actually tolerate. And the statistical analysis really drives this home. This table might look a bit intimidating, but what it's basically showing is that this isn't just a coincidence. The number of bullied employees who said management did nothing was significantly higher than what you'd expect by pure chance. There's a real statistical link between being a victim of bullying and seeing leadership just stand by. And what about the cost in dollars and cents? Well, it's huge because people just leave. A stunning 73% of the people affected are either thinking about leaving, actively trying to find a new job, or even considering ditching their entire career field. This isn't just a culture problem, it's a massive, expensive talent drain. So, okay, if inaction is the root of the problem, then what's the solution? How do you actually break this cycle of learned aggression in a workplace? The good news is the research doesn't just point out the problem, it also offers some really clear structural solutions. Dr. Hollis suggests 3 really concrete actions. First, bring in an ombudsman, that's a neutral third party, to just collect objective data on what's going on. Second, use 360-degree evaluations so that leaders are held accountable by the people they actually lead. And third, create oversight committees that have real teeth and clear ways for people to file grievances. Basically, these are all systems designed to create that correction that was so critical in the Bobo doll experiment. The main idea that ties all of these recommendations together is actually pretty simple. The goal is to build an organization that shifts from a culture of passive, deliberate indifference to one of active, structured intervention. It's all about making sure there is always an adult in the room who is ready and empowered to act. So, we'll end on this thought. The Bobo doll experiment taught us something profound. We learn from what we see, especially from what people in power do or what they don't do. Leaders are always teaching, whether they realize it or not. So the question to ask yourself is, what lesson is your workplace learning?